Hello everyone. Thank you for attending this morning's webinar with Rungi Tincock Monaco to cover Xeris 8. We just have a couple of housekeeping things to go over firstly with you, and then I will hand over to our presenter, Darren Rostron. So just to let everybody know that your phone lines will be muted. You should be able to hear us, but we can't hear you. This is just to keep the background noise down for everyone. However, we do have the ability to have questions, so you can fill in those boxes there as you can see on the screen, and we'll answer them at the end, but you can ask those questions any time. And also when we get to the end, you can raise your hand to ask a question. So over now to Darren Rostron to present this webinar.
Thanks, Benita. All right, welcome everyone. Today we're talking about Xeris 8. And look, just quickly, a couple of introduction slides. You see the agenda here on screen. So a couple of introduction slides just telling you about some of the changes to Xeris 8. We'll go through an actual live demonstration, so I'll jump into Xeris 8, show you a few things that have changed there, and also gives us a chance to recap some features that are well known but good for a refresher. And we'll, as Benita said, we'll have some questions at the end. So what's changed in Xeris 8? Firstly, one of the key changes to Xeris 8 is we've continued to modernise the product, and with another refresh to our user interface, particularly focused around adding a ribbon toolbar. So through the demonstration, I'll show you through the toolbar. Obviously, you've used those before, so we won't talk about how to use it, but we'll certainly show you some of the key features of Xeris and where they're positioned on the toolbars. And the other key change to Xeris 8 is that Xeris is now ready for enterprise integration. So we'll introduce to you Xeris for Enterprise. Xeris for Enterprise isn't the focus of today's session, but it does come up in a number of places, and I'll talk about it there. And particularly in the introduction, we'll give a brief view of what Xeris for Enterprise is. And lastly, in terms of the key updates, we've got a couple of minor enhancements of note, particularly around equipment functions firstly. So those that are very familiar with the equipment functions, particularly those like the new units and the replacement units and the capital functions, they've all had a prerequisite in the past where they look for a specific spreadsheet in the resource structure to do with the particular fleet. So we had to have individual spreadsheets in the resource structure for each of the fleets, typically for those functions to operate. Now we've simply, to make life a little bit easier and more flexibility in the way we build our Xeris models, we now have removed that prerequisite. So we can actually have our equipment-based information sitting in a single spreadsheet, for example, maybe in a database style of format, and we can link all of those functions to that data. That prerequisite of a specific individual spreadsheet for each fleet is no longer required. And secondly, on the graphs, the minor enhancements to the graphs, particularly where we can filter more information into the graphs and just look at, say, subtotals and period totals. Or if you've got a mixed calendar, so you've got months and then quarters and then years in your calendar, you might just want the graph to show the yearly data, so there's the totals for each year, but keeping the yearly data at the end of the calendar. And so we've got the ability to do that now as well in the graphs as a filter. So let's look a little bit closer in terms of the user update. Screenshot here, but we'll talk about it as we get into the live demonstration. In terms of the updated user interface, much more bright, much more modern, fresh look and feel. The ultimate reason for that is it makes Xeris much easier to learn and use. We can find the functions; they're not buried in deep down menus anymore. Well, the functions are quite easy to access and navigate through the ribbon nowadays. So let's talk about Xeris for Enterprise briefly, just to introduce it to you and what its capabilities are. So the first part is Xeris is now integrated with SAP. So as we build a diagram here to describe what that means, we've got our individual Xeris models, which we're all familiar with, and these could be different types of models on one site. These could be the same type of model on many sites. what we're doing is unlocking the data from those models and bringing it into Xeris for Enterprise, which is a server environment. So we've got an integration services environment that can communicate with Xeris directly and draw that data up into a SQL Server database and store it centrally. We then have the ability to move that data through a layer called SAP MII, which is SAP's integration and communication toolkit, and ultimately move data over to the SAP ERP system, to the financial modules or to the maintenance planning modules. Once we have the pathway open, we can draw the data from SAP down to a Xeris model through the same process. But what does it actually mean? It means that we can move certain types of data from SAP. For example, master data like charts of accounts, equipment lists, and maintenance strategies. It means we can move transactional type of data from SAP down to a Xeris model, so maintenance orders, last done next due, maintenance readings, all very important information for your reforecasting, monthly cycles. We can also move financial-based actuals from SAP, either keep them into Xeris for Enterprise or move them to the Xeris model. So this is the cost center expense code type information in terms of your actual costs per period. And in terms of moving data from Xeris to SAP, we can move forecast or plan data. So Xeris is calculating that plan, and we're moving that data back to SAP. So SAP becomes and remains the single source of truth, even for the planning information. Xeris for Enterprise also gives us additional ability to have integration of Xeris models to other Xeris models. Now Xeris has been able to talk to other Xeris models for quite a while, but very much on a small, site-based approach. What we're talking about here is the ability for, say, a corporate master model there on the left-hand side to communicate data to many models, child models throughout an organization. This could be many, 10, 15, 20 mine sites receiving data from a corporate master model. And the key data that we can move between the systems is particularly focused around the underlying business rules and logic. So we've got the ability now to synchronize templates and option lists and scripts and Xeris for Enterprise data transfer routines and a whole bunch of other things where we can synchronize that underlying logic from a master model to child models. But we can also synchronize, say, corporate assumptions. So in that corporate master model we can have fuel prices or tire prices or explosives prices, and we can have those distributed to the underlying child Xeris models on the mine sites through the server. No need for emails anymore, no need for Excel files traveling around the place, straight through the server integration process. And lastly, in terms of Xeris for Enterprise, it also allows us to integrate data from Xeris models to business intelligence tools. So using the same process, the same infrastructure, we can move data from Xeris models, and again think of this as many Xeris models on different sites, out to business intelligence tools like SAP Business Objects or SharePoint's PowerView or many toolkits out there. And it really enables us to take a lot of power from the data that sits within those Xeris models. Alright, today we're not focused on Xeris for Enterprise. It gave me a chance to introduce it to you. If you want more information, please let us know and we can communicate further. But let's focus more on, my mistake, just quickly here. What are the sort of data we can transfer to the BI tools? Financial plans and forecasts, particularly look at scenarios. Xeris is very powerful on multiple scenarios. We can have those and we can visualize the different options, maybe a base case and a high production and low production case. We can have them all over in the BI tool and we can do our analysis across the business, not just on one site but across the business. Okay, let's focus today on Xeris 8. Particularly let's look at some of these key things here. We'll look at the ribbon toolbar. We'll have a look at how we access the schedule now that the toolbar has changed, and it gives us a chance to refresh ourselves on Scenario Manager. We'll look at graphs and using the model layout with those graphs. A feature that's been in Xeris for a couple of releases now, but well worth highlighting again. We'll look at Navigator and some of the enhancements we've added to Navigator. And lastly, we'll look at a small enhancement we made to the default formula audit. In fact, in Xeris 7.12, but I'll refresh it here today. All right. Sorry, let's come back we'll go to Xeris now. So let's first start with the ribbon toolbar. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Alright, as I said, I know you know how to use ribbon toolbars, so we're not going to focus on how to use it. We'll focus on some of the key features of Xeris and where they sit within our ribbon. So firstly, we'll start with the File main button here. This has got your standard features, your open, close, exit the program, those sort of things, print options. But the key Xeris things to look at here, this is where we'll find our compact and backup tools. And also this is where we'll find our creation of a Xeris Reader model. For those that aren't aware of Xeris Reader, we've got a separate read-only version of Xeris. You can come to a Xeris model like this one. You can create a Xeris Reader file from it with this button here. And that makes a separate file which is pure read-only, and there's no licensing restrictions on who can access Xeris Reader and access that particular read-only file. And of course we've got our help and about buttons in here. Alright, next in terms of the toolbar, we've got our quick access toolbar here, similar to other programs. This is customizable and personalized to you. So you use this drop down arrow button here. I won't add too much here, but we can come here, we can add more commands, and you can choose what are the key features that you use often in Xeris, put them into that quick access bar for yourself, and away you go. Right, moving next to the home toolbar. So our intent for the home toolbar was these are the features that are used very regularly with Xeris from a user point of view. So if you're using the model, you're running the model, you're applying data, getting results, these are the tools you need to use. Firstly, you've got your standard clipboard features here. And key to Xeris is the different calculation options. So we've got calculate the active view, maybe the spreadsheet or the structure that's active. We've got calculate for the whole entire model. Notice there that the shortcuts still operate, so our Shift F9, which most people are used to, is still effective for calculate. We've got calculate all scenarios, which we'll come back to when we look at the schedule list. We can even calculate specific individual structures by clicking the drop down and choosing the particular structure that we wish to look at. We move next to the auditing features in Xeris, and obviously it's one of Xeris's key strengths is the various auditing features. From our drill down and drill back tool to our various specific spreadsheet based auditing toolkit, our default formula audit of course, and some other ability to look at the various references within the model. One thing just to point out, let me choose a cell that's going to be appropriate here. The toolbar is a toggle-based toolbar for certain buttons, so the resolve indirect references were used to being a toggle, so it still is. We click that, simply changes the way this formula is displayed here. But it's a toggle. You see it's active at the moment. We can switch it back off. Okay, so fairly common controls there on the toolbar. We've got our various reporting options and charting tools, which actually I'll come back to as we click through the demonstration. So we'll move next to the View toolbar. So this is where we'll view the various underlying features of your Xeris model from, so your standard zooming type functions are here. Some of the key panes, so the schedule list itself, the navigator, you can see them available here on the side of the screen. Okay. If they're closed for some reason, we can come to here and simply reactivate them from this panel. We've got the ability to look at our underlying structures and tables, particularly a commonly used table when you're building a Xeris model, your option lists, your depreciation tables. So they're here underneath the Tables button, and we can quickly access to those. We've got the ability to enter our design and our template view from this toolbar. And then we go through the various options of being able to look into behind the cells and the grid options. One of the key ones in terms of the views is fairly new to Xeris, is the ability for multiple layouts, and I will actually touch on this a bit later in the demonstration, and our standard Windows functions from here. Okay, so let's move to the Tools toolbar. Again, a fairly commonly used area of Xeris is the Tools options, so it still sits under the Tools toolbar, and the main Options button here will give you your standard options dialog. Here we've got our calendar rollover tool. For those that missed it in Xeris 7.12, we've got a new feature in called the calendar rollover tool. I won't focus on it today, but it does give you the ability to simply, it helps you roll forward your calendar. Say you're moving from last budget year to this budget year. You want to roll a calendar forward, update the period names, periods itself. That will do that for you. But most importantly, it will help you move, automatically move any local data that you've entered in it into a period, and make sure it remains with that period as a calendar moves forward. Something that's been quite manual in the past is now wrapped up in that one calendar rollover tool. So if you haven't used it yet, give it a try, see how it goes. So your standard other toolkit available here is the ability to export sheets or things like that into Excel, the ability to import features like a template, for example, from another model. It's where you'll find your script manager and the standard applications there for running scripts. And one that's been hidden for quite some time is the ability to debug your calculations. So if you've got some errors in your calculations, you can use this debug options. It will step its way through the calculation cycle so you can see where something may be going wrong. And as well, your ability to set up security and multi-user options are here. We'll focus next to the Enterprise toolbar. So we talked briefly before about Xeris for Enterprise and how Xeris 8 is the version of Xeris that connects to Xeris for Enterprise and across to SAP. Well, this is the toolbar and the toolkit available to us. So we've got first the ability to synchronize the underlying logic. So we can create a master, take this Xeris model, for example, and call it the master model. And we can have child models, which we then set as child models and run our synchronization tools. As I said, that's synchronizing the underlying templates and option lists and scripts and features in Xeris. And here's our toolkit for moving data to and from the Xeris for Enterprise server and ultimately SAP or BI tools. Again, I won't focus on these today. We'll probably have a separate session in the future about that. One important point to note is that if you will only see this Enterprise toolbar if you have a Xeris for Enterprise license. So the majority of our customers at the moment, they'll open up Xeris 8, this toolbar won't be active, it will be hidden because you don't yet have Xeris for Enterprise licensing. Alright, we do have a couple of context-sensitive toolbars, and what I mean by that is that you'll see them when you're using products like Excel. If you open a chart, for example, you'll get a separate toolbar for that. So in Xeris, we have those particularly for templates. So if we go and view the underlying template through the toolbar and design sheet of this particular little report here, we see that we've got ourselves a template-focused toolbar. So this is where you'll see the various different options and tools available to you when you're working with the template itself. And obviously, as you close down the template, that toolbar itself will disappear. If we look also, say, at an underlying tool called the category structure, okay, let's open the category structure. We've got a little toolbar specifically focused for that. Only some very few buttons here when you're working with the category structure. And very briefly, just some of the underlying tools, particularly Report Writer, for example, is also, we've also added the ribbon toolbar to that toolkit. So if we look at this example report here, as we bring up the Report Writer tool, where's it gone? Here it's gone on my other screen. Okay, bring that back. So we've added the ribbon toolbar to the Report Writer tool, for example. So to keep that common look and feel throughout the various features of Xeris. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a quick view of where the different features are on the ribbon. When you grab Xeris 8 and get it installed, please click around. I've been using it for a few weeks, and it takes no time to get used to where those buttons are. So very powerful way of using Xeris now. With the introduction of that ribbon toolbar, one of the things we changed was most users are used to seeing the ability to access the schedule on the toolbar itself. So that's no longer available on the toolbar with the ribbon. What we do have is the schedule list where we can access the schedule from. So this should open automatically on the left-hand side of your Xeris screen when you open Xeris 8. If it doesn't, you certainly can find it through the View and Schedule button. Let's just pin that there so we don't lose it. You see it auto hides that as well. So this is how we access our schedule now. Base case is our active schedule. We can simply display it as we normally do, and so it's fairly quick and easy to get to that. The beauty of having the schedule list is it also makes it very clear how many additional multiple options or multiple schedule spreadsheets are available to us. We can get to the design mode very quickly. We can set the current. So for example, if I wanted to look at the high case and use that as my current active schedule in the Xeris model, I can very easily set it here by highlighting it and set current. I can look at the underlying properties of these sheets. I can create new and delete as normal. So it's a very powerful little way of using the schedule nowadays. Whilst we're here, it gives me a chance just to refresh the scenario manager and having these multiple schedules, and what does it actually mean in Xeris to have those. It's a key feature that's been in Xeris for a long time, is the scenario manager. It means that we can have multiple options in terms of our production cases here. We want to be able to run those through the Xeris model and generate the multiple reports to hold the results of those different production alternatives. So for example, if we were to look at the report structure, we can see I've got an example here of a cash flow report where we've produced the cash flows, the various different cash flow reports for the different options. So as always with Xeris, these are identical templates, and as we've run through a calculation cycle, which I won't do today, but I'll come back to the home, we can calculate all scenarios. And we've also got a scenario manager which helps us to control which of these reports actually gets applied into this process. Okay, so for those that haven't seen it, bring up that dialog. Here's our basic reports available to us. I've selected the cash flow report, so it will produce multiple cash flow reports based on each of those production options. As I said, we can come to the calculate all scenarios. I won't calculate it today, but we could run that. It would cycle through sequentially through the different alternative production cases and provide that output for us. Okay. All right, let's move on now to the graphing tools. You can see the layout here with some graphing tools. I want to just show a quick example. I think the graphs are very powerful in Xeris, but very underutilized because in the past they've been quite hidden away from the user. Now that we can put them in the layout and we can access them easier from the toolbar, I want to show you a quick example of how powerful that can be in visualizing the data. So let's first open up our report structure again. And I'm going to run a report on our revenue. So let's bring up the revenue spreadsheet. And the revenue calculations are at the bottom of the sheet. So here's the information, the total revenue by product that I want to put into a chart. So we just highlight the rows here. That's the data I want to apply to a chart. Come to my home toolbar and click the graph button. So it'll pre-populate a graph for us. Now I've got the ability to work with this chart as you can in other charting tools and just make it look how I want it to look. And I'll just give you some examples of the things we might want to do. So let's look at the properties of this chart. The first thing I like to do with total revenue, for instance, I probably want to stack it and look at it so that I can see the total revenue come out, but I still want to see it by product. And I probably like to see a three-dimensional stacked bar chart here. So we go to the three-dimensional, let's choose that as our option. Alright, it's not quite looking the way I want it to look, so we can change the way it plots out. Look at the 3D view, choose a different type of three-dimensional view. Set the angle at which I want to look at it. Okay, still not quite what I want. We want to stack these on top of each other. Just go down to the series and the order. Now we can just simply stack them on top of each other. Alright. Okay, it's looking a bit more like what I want to see it. A little bit sort of squashed there, so we can go back to the plot in the 3D view and we can choose how wide to view it from. Okay, let's play around with these options till you get something you'd like to see. Might want to put a backdrop on it so it's a bit clearer. So let's go to the chart and the backdrop. Get a gradient fill in behind there. Now it starts to look a bit more like I want to view it. Maybe I want some shadows here to see the bars a little bit better. So I've got some lighting effects that I can choose as well. Let's put the light from the bottom left-hand corner, majority, and we can see some shading onto the chart as well. So it's actually quite a powerful tool. It's fairly quick and easy to learn and find out where all these different features are. As with all these sort of charting tools, if I just double click on an element here, so the title, it will just bring me up to that where I can choose different options around that title. Let's just call it total revenue. Okay, so there we're done. Nice simple chart. We can save that away. So this is available to us whenever we go into the revenue spreadsheet. Okay. And just to show you how you can access this chart again and replot it, even if the data's changed. Let's just close that now that we've saved it. Close our spreadsheet just so you can see excuse me, when I reopen it. So I can have revenue here and I can double click and open revenue again. Now if I look at the toolbar and I click the bottom half of this chart button, this graph button here, it points out that there's chart templates available to me. Here's the one we just created, so let's display that. So it's very easy to get back and see these charts. But even better, let's have some of these key charts available to us on our main layout. So let's close a couple of these items away. I left myself a nice little space here on my workspace. So let's pop that chart into there. Okay, this legend's taking up a bit too much space for me. Let's go here and reduce the size of the legend. Set the font size a little bit smaller. Okay, looks a bit better now. And so I can pop that chart into that space. If I want to save it there permanently, now I go to my view options, my view toolbar, and my layout options over here. And let's save that as layout number 1. Okay. So now it's available to me whenever I open the model, or I can switch between layout number 1 and layout number 2, which might be a structural view of the Xeris model. And that chart now is available, and it updates whenever you do a full calculation. It will refresh with that new data. So working with the charts and working with the layout is really a powerful feature of Xeris nowadays, and one that I wanted to remind you of. Okay, let's look now into Navigator and refresh ourselves and show you a couple of new features that we've got available in Navigator. So let me just pin it down there so we've got it. What we're going to do is show you a demonstration of adding some new steps, particularly around the new steps help you to guide a user through making modifications to the model. Say they've got a new spreadsheet that they need to create to capture costs and bring them across into, say, an activity structure. So let's go to the design mode of our Navigator and create, with this workflow manager, a new workflow. We'll put it at the bottom and we'll call it demonstration. Okay, it's automatically opened demonstration for me here in the main pane. Now let's add a step to that. Okay, so the first step I want to do is to show you, let's open a structure. Okay, because I need to create a new spreadsheet in one of the structures. So the step type, we'll give it a description. We'll open the resource structure. We choose the step type of open a single structure. We can navigate into the model to find the structure we want, or we can simply type it in like I have there. And OK. Alright, step number 2 is within the resource structure, I'd like to create a new spreadsheet. So let's add a new step. Step 2 is create a new sheet. Okay. So our step type is create a spreadsheet. Which structure do we want to create it within? The resource structure. And what template will this new spreadsheet be based upon? So in this example, I want to create a production cost input sheet. And step 2 is now created. And the last step is, well, as a user I will have created a new spreadsheet. I want to copy that spreadsheet and link it into the activity structure. Just create a third step here. Step 3, copy to activity structure. Drag and drop the new sheet into the activity structure. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We'll actually have both structures available to us, and then we'll point the user how to go about doing it. So we'd open up the resource structure, and we would open up the activity structure. Again, I can use this button here to navigate into the model and select these structures if I don't want to type them in. Okay, so I've created the 3 steps in this example of how to help a user step their way through creating a new spreadsheet in a model. So let's close out of our design view of Navigator. Let's bring it down so we've got a bit more space. So now I can activate these steps and show you how they actually work. So the first step was to open the resource structure. So let's click on the step. Okay, so it's opened the resource structure and given me a view of that structure in a full screen by default, and I can see what I'm about to do. Alright, yep, done that step. So the next step is I want to create a sheet within this structure. So let's create sheet. So the first prompter is, if I chose to put it under the production cost input style of template. So where within, say, the hierarchy under here do I want to put this new sheet? So if I just navigate and click underneath production costs. And secondly, what do you want to call this new spreadsheet? Okay, nice and easy example for us. Click OK, and our spreadsheet is created with the help of Navigator. So the third step for us is we want that new spreadsheet called demo to be copied and linked into the activity structure. So we've done step 2, let's activate step 3. Okay, so now we have both structures available to us. Navigate to our new spreadsheet, and where do you want to put it over here in the activity structure? I'm going to put it straight under this admin example. So we'll have a tip here, drag and drop that new spreadsheet into the activity structure. Alright, let's do that. Place it over here in the activity. In the standard way, which type of spreadsheet will it be linked to? What's it called? Where's it positioned? And OK. So with the assistance of Navigator, we've completed the 3 steps, and this could be 7 or 8 steps in reality of helping a client, helping a user create sheets into the Xeris model. Typically this has been instructions that have been in printed Word documents that sit on someone's shelves and we forget where they are, or even as we hand models over to new people they forget to pass that on. Now that documentation can be written into the Xeris model, and as a checklist, have I done all the right steps to modify my Xeris model. Okay. Let's refresh back to our main view, close down those parts, and close down Navigator. Okay, so the last step I'd like to show in terms of the demonstration today is just to show you the changes we've made to the default formula audit. So here it's available for us on the toolbar. Now we've got two options. I can do the entire model in one step or the current active view. At the moment I'm active on a graph, so that's not active in terms of this audit. If I was to activate a specific spreadsheet, I have the ability to run either option here. Let's, for today's example, just run it over the entire model. Choose the options that you wish to look at for this particular audit and run the audit. The main change is that that audit is now a new window. Previously it would come into the message box down the bottom, which meant that if you recalculated the model or did some changes, then you lost that audit. Now it's in its own window. We can see all of the options that we selected, and we can see the values and the position of the particular override. It gives us a better view of what the previous formula or what the formula that's in the template actually is, and what the local value which currently sits in that cell. The power of this spreadsheet view of this audit now is that we can use the drill down tool. So we can drill down from this to the location of that particular override. So it's taking me to the cell. As always, I can choose what do I do with this. Do I keep it? Do I change it? Once I'm happy that I understand this change and I've worked with it, I can use the drill back button to move back to the audit. And in this example, I've only got the one override, but if you've got multiple, then you'll have them listed out here, and you can navigate, drill down, drill back to each of those, and remove or keep them as you please. It's just a much fresher way of dealing with that audit. It's a very powerful audit in Xeris, particularly when you're refreshing into a new forecast or budget cycle. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the demonstration part. Let's quickly jump back to the presentation here. Last thing to point out, Xeris 8 was released and distributed to our customers last Monday, the 27th of May. So it typically gets forwarded to the license holder. So if you haven't seen or aren't aware of it, contact your IT or a license holder, and they should have access to download Xeris 8 and install it. And Xeris for Enterprise was launched last Thursday, a brand new product, and we've launched that to the marketplace on last Thursday. So I'm very excited about that new product. Okay, so over to you guys. Any questions, you can type them in, or you can click that raise your hand button and we can activate you and you can ask the questions.
Darren, thank you for that. We actually do have a question. I'll let you know the first question. Can you utilise the graphs to compare with a previous budget/Xeris model? For example, current production volumes versus previous budgets.
Thanks, Benita. So inside the specific Xeris model, you could do that by capturing the previous data and storing it in its own spreadsheet. So we've done that in the past for clients, where we'll have a routine where we just draw in the approved budget, for example, and store it in a spreadsheet, and then we could build a graph or maybe a separate spreadsheet which brings that budget data, for example, matches it up to the new forecast data that you've just recalculated, and visualize them on the same chart within Xeris. Alternatively, through the concept of Xeris for Enterprise stores the previous versions, so we can send data, say, from your budget and store it in the business intelligence tool, and we can send data from your new forecast and also store it, and then we can visualize it through the business intelligence and analysis tools as well. So there's options to certainly have both.
Thank you, Darren. We have another question. Will Xeris 7 files be compatible with Xeris 8 or require conversion?
No, they are fully compatible, so there's no conversion. And in fact, Xeris 8 files are backwardly compatible to Xeris 7. Obviously, some of the new features, like any Xeris for Enterprise features that may have been utilized, wouldn't be available back in Xeris 7.12. But yeah, there's no hassles with upgrading from 0.7 to 0.8. There's simply open that FMDX file in 0.8 and away you go.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Did we have any further questions from anybody? You can either raise your hand or type them into the pane on the right of your screen. No, I think if that's all the questions that we have for today, then we will wrap up the webinar. Thank you everybody so much for your time attending today. We will actually be sending out a brief survey at the conclusion of this webinar. We would really appreciate your feedback. It's something that we are trying to do more of, and your feedback is important to making these surveys as interesting and in answering the questions that you all have. We will also, for everybody who feeds back the survey, we can send you a recording of today's webinar. So if you're interested to pass that on to anybody else within your organisation, other Xeris users or people interested in the product, you can do that and share that. And we'll also be making that available online. So we'll send that out to you after the webinar. So I think that's it. Thank you very much, Darren, for your presentation today. Thank you everyone so much again for attending. All of the information there to keep updated is there. And if you have any questions about your Xeris 8 license and access to the latest version, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you everyone. We'll conclude the webinar now.